Okay, it's here. That little box, I picked it up. Thing is dead weight. We'll see about the speaker. Ready for the unboxing and ready for this challenge. QSC K8.2 to this little RCF TT-515. But that's a heavy mat. It's kind of like a bowling ball. You think it's light and then you pick it up. We will see. So here is our sound demo comparison. I spent time, both speakers are being played through the same mixer. The mixer is at unity. The dB level is the same. I spent my time to make sure that's the same, about 94 dB max. And that's very important when you're comparing speakers, because if one speaker is louder than the other, your ear automatically thinks and your brain thinks it's better. I believe it's called the Munson curve, Fletcher-Munson curve, where louder sounds sound better. When you're playing very low, things don't sound the same. I believe mixers, professional people who mix at about 85 dB. So I have this a little higher for some dynamics. And the procedure is I'm going to start with the QSC K8.2. And then I have a foot switch. I'm not going to show that to you, but I can engage the RCF by foot. And hopefully you'll be able to hear how the sound changes. The song I'm playing is a YouTube song, so there's no copyright issues, I hope. It's a pretty good demonstration track, nice and clean. So here we go, starting with the QSC K8.2. I guess this isn't completely an even playing field. Both speakers should be at the same height, but I don't have the adapter for the RCF. You need a special $150 pole adapter. I haven't purchased that yet because I'm not 100% sure I'm keeping the speaker. I also want to mention during the sound demo, I am going to zoom in. So when I zoom into the RCF, that means it's engaged. If I zoom into the QSC, that's the speaker we're hearing. Okay, so now we're ready. Play the same track. This time I'm only going to play the RCF. There'll be no QSC engaged, just to give you an idea how it sounds by itself. Same thing, same track. This time the QSC by itself, RCF is not going to be engaged. want you to remember there's no subwoofer involved here. These are just the tops. For the last test, I'm going to start with the RCF, and I'm going to engage the QSC in and out, and we'll see if that makes a noticeable difference. Here we go. RCF by itself, and then I'm going to engage the K8.2. I want to point out that the QSC definitely has some hum at idle here. The mixer the gain is up at unity. On the back of the QSC, it's also at unity at 12 o'clock. So it's not being pushed high levels, but I don't know if you can hear it or not, but there's definitely a noticeable hum. Of course, I'm very super close to it. When you stand back at listening position, it completely goes away, especially if you're playing any kind of music. So let me be quiet and you can hear the hum. When I go to the RCF, dead silent. So that's a difference right there. Sometimes hum bothers people. Also on the QSC, after a certain time, especially when you're playing live, the fan kicks in, and that's audible too. On the CP8, there is no fan. On the K8.2, there is a fan, and it is audible when it gets hot. But again, when music is playing, you don't hear any of that. So here I am back at the listening position across the room, about 4 meters, or I would say. And I can definitely hear that hum. It is noticeable, but it's very slight. I don't know if that's a factor for most people. Another thing I didn't mention is the fact that the QSC does have EQ, and that's on the K8.2. If you go with the CP8, it doesn't have any EQ. So on the K8.2, it does have an EQ section. The RCF does not. Strictly flat. That's what you hear is what you get. So right now, as you heard that listening demo, everything on the QSC is flat. So if you engage that QSC and EQ it, you can change and tailor the sound. I just want to point that out. That's very important, especially for musicians, acoustic guitarists. I know they use EQ for different rooms that they're in, and they also use EQ if there's any issues with reverb. They can cut certain frequencies to control the reverb. So again, RCF, no EQ on board. So I can definitely change the sound of the QSC. Maybe you can even bring up that high end on the QSC to sound similar to the RCF, but I'm not going to try that in this video. After the sound demo, I hooked up the QSC CP8, and I was right, it's dead silent, just like the RCF. So the K8.2 has a 2000 watt amp compared to the 1000 watt amp that the RCF has, and the CP8 also has the 1000 watt amp. Okay, let's look at the form factor. Interesting, I never saw them side by side. They're exactly the same height. Obviously, the RCF is much slimmer. Maybe that would be a factor putting in your car. Weight, the RCF is 22 pounds. QSC is 27 pounds. Not a huge difference, 5 pounds, but the RCF really carries very nicely in the hand. It has two handles, one on the top and one on the bottom. It's super easy to carry. I really like that feature. Actually, I've never seen that in a speaker with two handles like that. QSC is definitely a little bulkier, but they're both super well made. I would have to say the RCF is even better. It's a wooden enclosure. It really feels very professional, really tank-like. But the QSC is great also. QSC, 7-year warranty, can't beat that. And the RCF has your standard warranty, so that's definitely a factor. Big difference on the back here. RCF is strictly used with a mixer. Can't use it any other way. Nothing to plug in, no inputs. QSC is 2 channels. It has a DSP function, I mentioned, where you can adjust EQ. RCF doesn't have that. QSC has a locking power cord that the CPA doesn't have, and the RCF has your power con, I think they call it, professional type of power connection. You can tell the QSC is quite a bit larger as far as form factor. RCF is super slim. I really like that feature about it. QSC is built to be played in the monitor position. It's very popular for live bands for that usage. The RCF, I'm not sure if it could be used as a monitor. It lays down flat, but it doesn't tilt up, as you can see. One thing that is really interesting about the RCF that I tried out, it is so thin, it actually slid under my bed. You can imagine having that much power in a bedroom setup. So that form factor really gives you a lot of options where to place this speaker. I would say that's a huge difference between these two. An important factor for myself when considering comparing 2 different speakers, and that is volume output, called max SPL. I'll look at that figure much more than wattage. Some companies list all kinds of inflated figures for wattage, but they don't really perform. You can't really compare speakers by wattage. But SPL wise, I never actually tested the K8.2 for max SPL. What I have tested is its little brother, which is 1,000 watts compared to 2,000 watts, and that is the CP8. And I got 110 dB. So that is very, very loud compared to my other speakers. So I figured I don't even test, there was no reason to test the K8.2. It's gonna be louder. It's rated for 127 dB. Now the RCF here, I'm sorry, the K8.2 is 128 dB. The RCF is right behind it, surprisingly enough, at 127 dB. But in my max sound test, which I did do on the RCF, I was only able to get 108 dB before clipping. And I did want to say, when I say only, that's an incredible figure, especially for this size speaker. So the CP8 was louder by 2 decibels. That's definitely noticeable. So another factor was when the RCF reached 108 dB, it did not sound good. It was harsh and stringent, where the QSC K8.2, I'm sure, with that higher headroom amp, 2,000 watts, I'm sure it would stay cleaner at those kind of volumes. So that's definitely a factor. But like I said, it's not quite up with the QSC level, but it is amazing for the size. I have the big brother of this speaker, and that is the RCA TT-10-A. Now that speaker is very expensive, $3,000 for one speaker. I got it at a much better price than that, but things have gone up in the last 2 years since I bought it. So I put these 2 speakers next to each other, A/B them, and I couldn't believe it. They are almost exactly the same sound signature. I say almost because the other speaker has a 10-inch woofer. It has a little more mids, a little more bass. You would never even notice it unless they're right next to each other. But the sound itself, the clarity at volume is basically the same. So RCF, they've done a wonderful job. This is the TT line, and they claim that the whole TT line sounds very, they call it voiced. They say it's voiced the same. And I agree at this point. The only difference is, as I mentioned before, is max volume. The speaker, you can't expect it to be going up to the same high volumes as the TT-10. This will start sounding harsh. With the TT-10 has a lot more headroom, but you're going to pay that much more money, and this is so much more portable. Let's wrap it up. If you've read my comments, one of my comments was, when I first tested the RCF, I was shocked. And the shock was, I put it next to the CP8 and how good the QSC CP8 was. So close to this very, very expensive speaker. Remember, the CP8 is $500. This speaker is $1,800. QSC is $850. Basically, you get two K8.2s compared to one RCF. RCF is from Italy, and there's all kinds of issues with parts right now, and prices have gone up since the pandemic. So that's why you got that huge price difference. So it really comes down to size, form factor, in my book. If you need something so slim and sleek, if you think this would look great in a paying venue, which many DJs consider, then you might want to spend the extra money. Obviously, I have both. I don't know if I'm going to keep the RCF. I'm still deciding. I haven't put it on top of a sub yet. That will be an interesting test. I feel the sound signature, the RCF, is very, very clean on top. Even more so than the QSC, which was kind of an eye-opener. In my eyes, QSC is always super clean on top. It still is, but the RCF was just to the next level. During the sound test, when I engaged the RCF, it just sounded so much louder, but it wasn't. I told you I had used the dB meter, and it was only 94 dB for each, but it sounded way louder. So that was interesting. But on the other hand, the RCF is kind of lean in the mid-range and bass. That for half the money, the QSC had added some nice low end missing from the RCF. So is that a factor? I'm thinking once you add a subwoofer to the RCF, that's not going to be a factor anymore. All those lows and mid lows will be handled by the subwoofer, and you'll just have that super clean high end at pretty good volume from the RCF. So it all comes down to what you need. To me, I'm really debating if I'm going to keep the speaker. I'm not sure at this point. I really love the form factor, how thin it is, how it's so easy to carry, 22 pounds, but I'm not sure. So leave some comments down below if you're interested. And is this something you would buy? Or people have asked, how would two K8.2s compare to one RCF speaker? And again, anytime you have two speakers, you have that left and right sound field that can't be produced by one speaker. So that's a huge factor. The RCF does have a 100-degree throw, which is very good. K8.2 has 105 degree, a little better. But they're both wonderful speakers. The RCF is really a professional speaker. I'll leave it at that. This is Bill, signing off.